and welcome to episode number 110 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, the PAX West Preview Show. This is Jason Finelli, the esports and gaming insider for Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts is where you can hear my voice. And ladies and gentlemen, do we have a gigantic show for you. As I said, this is the PAX West Preview Show, and 3 big-time interviews happening throughout the course of the show. We have Justin Roiland, co-creator of Rick and Morty and founder of Squanch Games, here to talk about High on Life. We have Celia Schilling, friend of the show and marketing manager from Yacht Club Games, to talk about Shovel Knight Dig and everything else they're bringing to PAX West. And finally, Matt Casamassina, former founder of IGN, now CEO of Rogue Games, talking about the slew of indie titles they will have in their double-sized booth on the PAX West show floor out there in Seattle. Looking to be a fantastic weekend for games. If you're headed to the Pacific Northwest, make sure you have a good time and check out everything that I'm about to talk about here. But before we get into any of that, let's get into the 6 in 60 seconds. The Philadelphia Fusion dropped both matches from last weekend's Summer Showdown slate, losing to Shanghai 3-1 and Guangzhou in a 3-2 reverse sweep. Leviathan is the first team to qualify for the Valorant Champions Tour Champions Bracket stage, defeating Team Liquid and Paper Rex each 2-0 in order to advance. Warner Bros. Games and Player First Games have announced the next entrant for their free-to-play platform fighter Multiverses, Gizmo from Gremlins, who is coming this Tuesday. 343 Industries has extended the second season of Halo Infinite multiplayer by 2 months, while also canceling the planned local co-op campaign features. After images leak online, Ubisoft confirms the next Assassin's Creed game is Assassin's Creed Mirage, set in ancient Baghdad, with more to come on September 10th. And finally, the United Kingdom's Competition and Markets Authority has marked the sale of Activision Blizzard to Xbox for further review, citing concerns it could be harmful to competition in the industry. Those are your 6 in 60 seconds. Yes, folks, those are your 6 in 60 seconds for the week. The Fusion are disappointing. I cannot believe they got reversed swept by Guangzhou. My head in my hands as I watched that match. Gizmo coming to Multiverses is very, very cool. Very excited for that, as I am also excited for Assassin's Creed Mirage. And also the tale of Activision Blizzard being sold to Xbox continues to unfurl. Xbox swears that they will release games like Call of Duty day and date on Xbox and PlayStation in order to not affect competition, but the UK is not convinced. So we will see where that saga goes from here. Moving on to our first interview of the show. When I say co-creator of Rick and Morty, founder of Squanch Games, creator of Solar Opposites, there's only one person that I could be talking about, and that is the one and only Justin Roiland, joining me now to talk about his new game, High on Life. Justin, how are you? How is Seattle this morning?
It's nice. It looks like it's going to be a rare sunny day here in Seattle. No rain.
Will you be able to enjoy it, or will you be doing press stuff all day?
All day, yeah, press all day.
Oh, no, that's a shame.
Yeah.
That is a shame.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. It'll be okay.
Yeah, so big weekend for you. You got this going on, plus you got Rick and Morty Season 6 starting up on Sunday. But first, let's talk about High on Life. I have to ask you about the concept for this game. Now, obviously, other things that you've put out have been sort of outlandish ideas, let's say. But now the guns are talking back to us, and I don't I watched the demo from Gamescom, the 25-minute demo where you fight Nine Torg and the pistols talking to you the entire time. Where did you come up with this? I have to ask.
I had the idea way back in I want to say 2015, 2014 for Talking Guns. The original concept was sort of, I'm surprised no one did it. I was expecting a game to get announced any day,
between now
ever since. Yeah, I don't know how it hasn't happened. It's such an obvious idea, but the concept really was just, you have your companions in like Dragon Age,
mm-hmm.
or any good game where they're with decent writing, and you've got those, and they're alive and they're with you, and you go on the the quests with them and stuff. And yeah, that felt like what I wanted to do, but with the guns you're holding. It just made so much sense because they're literally with you. They're in your inventory. you use them to shoot. It kind of felt like the perfect combination of those two ideas. And with Trover, he was designed to be, very aware of you, the player, and he's talking and he's sort of like along this journey with you. And the narrative design lessons we learned on that, we brought that over and just kind of blew it up for this game. But now it's like you have there's four different Trovers. Technically, there's a fifth as well. Now there's five. Yeah, I mean there's five guns, but yeah, like that's imagine what we realized is like we're writing 5 or 4 games here, because the player can equip, as they're rescuing these guns, they can equip whatever gun they want to play with, and every gun has a complete full suite of unique dialogue, and personality and personality opinions about the situation, and different dialogue tree options with NPCs, and like it's just it's a beast of a game. But yeah, the talking gun thing, yeah, it's been kicking around. I had it before we started working on Trover. That was like one of my early ideas, and we just ended up going in a different direction, pivoted because we got financing from Sony, for Trover. And it was like I was pretty familiar with, at the time, the Morpheus. Was it called the Morpheus? Whatever the original code name.
That sounds right. Yeah,
PSVR. I was familiar with the hardware. I was familiar with the Move controllers, and I was like, the game, the talking gun game isn't going to work. It's not going to work on this hardware. It wasn't going to work for what I wanted it to be. So I just pivoted to the other kind of VR that I was obsessed with at the time, which was third-person action platforming. When there wasn't a lot of it, that was gamepad, like an actual full suite of controls.
Sure.
And so I fell right into that like concept and had a blast making that. But now we get to come back to the talking guns, and we've been working on it for years, and it's crazy that it's seeing the light of day. You work on these games for so long in a cave, and then all of a sudden the world knows about it now. It's really cool.
So do you feel like, so obviously Trover, you said third-person action platforming, and then now you're into the first-person shooter genre. Do you basically craft an idea and find a genre to fit in it, or is there like a genre of game where you're like, wow, I really want to make a game in that genre, and then think about what you could fill it with? Like, how does that creative process work?
For me, it's I'm a big gamer, so and this whole thing is like a crazy. I never thought I'd ever be making games. You know what I mean? I surprised myself with how much game knowledge I have.
Sure.
When I got into, so to answer your question, what I do is I have sketchbooks and notebooks, and I'll have inspiration usually from other games, other sources, other things that I really have fun playing. And then I'll find stuff that doesn't exist, and I'll think of stuff that doesn't exist, and I'll try to find, does it exist? Like, I'll ask everybody I know. I'll scour Steam. And I just basically keep notes. Like, I'll play a lot of games, and I'll be like, either this is a great example of what not to do, what I don't want to do.
Sure.
So I can literally pull a game up with my design team, or my team leads, or my directors, and just be like, okay, check this out. Cannot do this. We cannot do it like this. So this is what not to do. And I might have like 10 or 20 examples of that, but then I'll have like, a 10 or 20, 30 examples of like different things that I think would be amazing. And it's kind of like, but then there's stuff that just doesn't exist. Like the talking guns was something that we had to kind of figure out, okay, what's the best way to do that? What's the best way to do it in a way that makes the gun, the rule we had was the gun needs to feel like alive. All the stuff we do at Squanch, we don't want to hear the same dialogue over and over. We don't want to. It can't be Simpsons Hit and Run. And I love that game, but that game is like,
oh, no, it's the truth.
You hear Homer, you hear Homer say the same 7 things. Like
I love that game too, but that is 100% the truth.
Yeah, and to me as a gamer, I'm like, yeah, that's not going to fly for what we're doing. So we want to keep the guns alive. That means we're going to have to write a ton of dialogue and record it, and then also make sure the gun isn't annoying, talking to a point of excessiveness, to where it's like,
Right.
Okay, shut up. So it's, it's a balance, and that's stuff that we had to kind of find for ourselves and what felt right for us. But then, yeah, just, typical, like, if you're a shooter fan, it's pretty easy to identify what shooters you tend to like more than others. And then you start drilling into, well, why is that? And you start looking, I mean, it's just everything from UI to just feel to, I'm a big Metroidvania guy. I love Prime. I love the Prime series. I love any FPS or any game in general that has lock and key, upgraded weapons, like new abilities, all that kind of stuff. And so, we did it with Trover, but we really blew it out with this game, because you've got a bounty suit you can upgrade, you've got guns you can upgrade after you rescue them, you've got, and the upgrades are fucking amazing. I mean, it's stuff that I was like, why don't, like, there's stuff in the game that I'm like, why I want this in a game. Like, I knew from the beginning I want this has, and there's a game I could reference, but yeah, it was just like this. I was obsessed with this one mechanic, and I really, really wanted it in our game so bad, and we had to. I'll just say it's a jetpack. A jetpack in games. They're not in enough games. I'm like, well, I want more jetpack games. But then you find out, like, oh, well, there's a reason they're not in games. You have to design everything around all of the edge casings.
Yeah.
All your maps, everything. You have to be really smart. But I made it a priority early enough that we, it was like, okay, like I was like a baby. I want a jetpack. I want a jetpack in the game. It was really important to me. And I want an upgrade tree. I want an upgrade tree for the jetpack. I don't want it to just be, a jetpack. I want to be able to upgrade the fuel. I want to be able to upgrade, how fast I shoot up in the, I want a full upgrade tree for the jetpack too. So yeah, but I mean, there's like all kinds of stuff like that in the game that really makes it, I mean, it's funny. People I think right now are just sort of seeing the very, it's like, oh, cool, talking guns, but they don't, as time goes on and more people get to play it, and of course once it ships and people really get to play it, I think they're going to realize there's a lot going on in a good way with this title.
So when you're implementing that jetpack, all of a sudden you're taking that first person shooter like basically horizontal gameplay and adding some verticality to it. Is there a lot of challenge in that, I assume?
Well, I found it to just be really fun to give the player the option to, fly up above enemies, and it gives you more options in how you want to deal with an encounter, and because enemy types, you start, as you get deeper in the game, you're discovering more different enemy types and AI, AI systems and stuff that really. The jetpack starts to become quite useful and to certain encounters. So yeah, it's a beautiful dance. Everything, the design team and just everybody at the studio. It's this beautiful sum of all these parts that come together. With the different mechanics we have in the game, playing into the way encounters are scripted, or just how AI works, certain enemies work. You're really encouraged to use that jetpack in certain scenarios for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I have to ask, all of the major franchises that you're working on now, Rick and Morty, obviously High on Life, Solar Opposites, they all kind of fit into a certain sci-fi sort of motif. So when you have an idea for a joke or for a situation or for like a one-off thing, how do you decide where it goes? Like, is it just because you're in a planning meeting with the Rick and Morty team or with the Solar Opposites team or with the High on Life team? Or like, do you look at your notebook, let's say, and say, this is a Rick and Morty joke? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess there's two types of things. Like, I mean, if I have an idea that's clearly a Rick and Morty episode or kind of a more canonical, or, it's like, oh, this is clearly a Rick and Morty thing, it wouldn't work anywhere else. It's designed for that. Then obviously but I think for the most part, it's just where my attention is at. And then, I tend to work in the bubble I'm thinking in, or the world that I'm in. Like, if I'm focused on the game, I'm thinking game things. And obviously, like, the game has a ton of like comedy, interdimensional cable stuff on the TV, like a lot of content on the TV.
Excellent.
and I mean that's all stuff that technically could be, interdimensional cable 3,
right,
stuff. But it's just fun to do, and we were having fun, and we would be recording the main game, and then suddenly, just for fun, we're doing like just a bunch of improv, and then it ends up, oh well, let's like have somebody animate this and put it in the game, because why not? We have it. But yeah, I think there's certain stuff that's very much like it'll pop into your brain, and it's like, oh, that's definitely a solar opposites, like Terry Corbo type story. Or a joke, but I think the jokes are more like kind of where I'm at, like what I'm focused on.
Okay.
But I also surround myself with really incredible people. Like there's no way I'd be able to do all the shit I'm doing by myself. Like it's just not possible. I would be dead. I would be completely just screwed. So I have incredible partners on Solar Opposites. Mike McMahon and Josh Bicel are brilliant. They're there like every single day, all the time, like making sure that show is incredible. And then of course I've got on Rick and Morty, you've got Scott Martyr, Dan Harmon, and and all the writers on both shows too. I shouldn't just incredible writers, but so you're able to kind of come to the table with really cool ideas and workshop them, and then kind of let them they kind of go and are taken care of by really brilliant people. So, and then on the video game side, it's like, this was a big one. It's like writing a movie, it's like a big story. It's got a full, it really is like writing a movie, but times, I don't know how many times, 20 30,
however.
Yeah, so,
how long
do
you have an estimated gameplay time?
It's funny. I don't know what it is, because it's so, you're always kind of checking that, but I haven't checked, as the game continues to come up and polish and kind of bug fixes and changes and everything's sort of like clicking into place, that number can change.
Sure.
I don't actually know it. I'll find out. I'll tell you another time. But but I will say it's a decent, it's like a legitimate, like full, it's like in my opinion, like a very satisfying, like single player
experience
length, Yeah. And I'm a huge gamer, and I'm all about that. Like I don't want to game. Like I personally, like I'm kind of more lately, I've been like, give me a game that's like a nice 15, hour or 20 hour, like,
same.
Leave me wanting more, as opposed to not finishing it, or, like having it end up on my backlog. Like leave me like, usually is sort of where I'm at. There's a few exceptions in there, but that's been my, we aimed for something along those lines. Don't quote me on those numbers,
no, sure,
but
sure.
that's kind of, for me, that's what I tend to want lately. And that is kind of the driving force behind what we're doing at the studio, is like making things that don't exist, and making games that I wish existed,
That's cool.
And it's like, yeah, not just this game, the stuff that I can't talk about, but like, all the stuff that we're doing is like, I wish this existed. Why doesn't it exist? And then, okay, well, let's just make it exist. So
that's a great,
it's
a great philosophy. It's a perfect way to go about it. If it doesn't exist, we'll just make it ourselves. I love that.
It's incredible, man. Like making games, like it was just epiphany too, because we started the studio with VR, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, we could just make video. we could just make video.
Do whatever we want.
Normal video. Yeah, we can make anything.
That's awesome.
And that's what started High on Life. But like, now it's like sunk in, and I'm like, I'm just like, it's almost like the equivalent of being a kid whose parents own a candy store, and you can just run around and eat candy all day. It's like you have your own game team that's amazing. Everyone's incredible on this, and everyone's really in sync creatively at the studio. And it's like, yeah, you could just make it's insane. It's really crazy. It's kind of a dream.
Very, very cool. So I'll let you go on this. I know you have a lot to do. Rick and Morty season 6 this Sunday. Anybody looking for that last minute, like, what can you tell me about this? What are you most excited about? What is it that you're looking forward to? Even not in the first episode, the whole season in general. What is it that you're looking forward to from your fans, as far as like maybe a reaction or something like that?
Ah, man, that's a good question. It's funny. I got to meet some fans in Malibu, and it's been a minute. Like I haven't done any, like hasn't been an opportunity to meet Rick and Morty fans, and they were really, it's so funny. I think the whole Rick and Morty fans are all toxic is such an unfair thing, but anyway, because everyone I always meet is so sweet. But I think, there's it, like a typical Rick and Morty. I think this season's really good. I'll say that. Like, I feel it's better than 5.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's rare to hear a creator like say something like that, but I really do believe that. And and I think it's got a decent mix of canonical stuff that people really like. There's fans that really just want the canon episodes, the real like hardcore, But then there's just as many, like there's some really good. This season has one of my favorite episodes in a long time. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you're a fan of the show, you know that there's 2 Beths now.
Yes.
It's just a great episode with it's
Okay.
it's a nice Thanksgiving episode with the family. It's really, really, really good. It's easily my favorite episode, maybe in the last, like, for sure, the last 3 seasons.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
really good.
That's a bar. That's a high bar, and he's selling it right here. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Justin Roiland, founder of Squanch Games, co-creator of Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty starts this Sunday, and High on Life is due November, I think, or did it get...
December.
December. It got pushed. Due in December. Check it out on Xbox and PC. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Coming up after the break, Celia Schilling of Yacht Club Games comes to talk Shovel Knight, Dig, and everything else they have coming to PAX West this weekend. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 110, the PAX West preview show. Big thank you to Justin Roiland and Squanch Games for coming on to talk about High on Life. Also, Rick and Morty does debut this Sunday, so just a perfectly timed interview for him to come and chat with us about his games. And speaking of perfectly timed, I scheduled this one in advance to record before it released on Friday. I said, hey, do you want to come on? Friend of the show, when do you want to come on? And she says to me, Tuesday night's fine. Little did I know that Tuesday afternoon, she'd be dropping bombs. So we have plenty to talk about here with our friend from Yacht Club Games, marketing manager Celia Schilling. Celia, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Today was such a wild ride. So yeah, it was perfectly timed when you gave me a Tuesday slot. I was like, oh, yep, just a regular Tuesday. Definitely nothing secret about to announce.
Nothing going on. Yeah, so if you have not seen the news from earlier this week, by the time this goes live, Shovel Knight Dig got a release date on September the 23rd, coming to Switch, last gen, right? PS4 and Xbox One, but playable
it's going to be coming out on Nintendo Switch, Apple Arcade via their subscription, and on Steam.
Okay, so not on the other consoles yet. Apple Arcade was actually the very surprising one for me. It's actually how I found out about it first. I get the Apple Arcade press release email with everything that's coming in September, and there it was. I did not expect it to see on mobile. Was that a new challenge for you?
It was definitely a new challenge. It was very exciting. The team, when we started talking with Apple Arcade, which we can get into in a little bit, we were thrilled to have that opportunity, and we were like, game on. Let's put it on Apple Arcade too.
Game on, the greatest pun in video games. I love it. Every time I hear it, it just jazzes me up. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about coming to mobile via Apple Arcade. Is this Yacht Club's first foray into mobile?
Yeah, this is our first step onto the type of mobile platform.
So what about Apple Arcade appealed to you as that first step? Obviously, the built-in subscription base is probably a big, help, because you'll have all those players who are already coming in. But walk me through that thought process of coming to mobile for the first time.
I mean, for it, like in true Yacht Club Games fashion, we want to put our games on every platform possible.
That's right.
You want that, you get the platform, you get one too. And it's one of those things that Apple Arcade is such a positive base, and we just thought it'd be really fun to work with them on it and release on that platform as well. We're really thankful for working with them, and they've been they've been so great. I've been super close with their marketing team, and like this morning we both were messaging back and forth, like, you ready for it? I'm coming soon right now. And it was definitely a fun experience. Obviously, when developing Dig, it's one of those things where it was a little bit of a challenge to make sure that we had everything fit seamlessly on every type of platform that we're releasing on. But what's cool about it is that Apple worked with us on that. And when we were developing, we made sure we had seamless touch controls, and we made sure it's customizable where it feels really organic when you're playing on the mobile game as well.
Cool. Now, will it have controller support?
So I think there is.
I think
I would have to double check.
Sure.
I've been using the swipey features. Like I literally have an iPhone on the floor right now and
that's
my
awesome.
iPad, and I was like playing through it, recording some gameplay footage. So the touch controls are great.
Cool.
I'll get back to you on
the controller support.
well.
Now, based on the trailer that was released today, swipe controls do make sense because there is a lot of digging, verticality in this game. So let's walk through the premise real quick for those who may not have seen it so far. So Shovel Knight, titular character, had been around since 2014, right? 2014.
Yes.
He's napping in front of the campfire as he does, having a good time, and then that nasty drill knight and his friends come up from the ground, steal all his treasure, and then he has to go digging for it. So what about this? Really makes it more of a unique experience as opposed to previous Shovel Knight games. Because someone who may not be familiar with the franchise may see it and be like, oh, more of the same. But for those who may want to try it, what's different?
So besides the aesthetic, that has like a new, I would say like a facelift of sorts.
I would say so too.
Besides
Nitrome.
that, and I know Nitrome's amazing. We'll get into that in a minute, but they've been absolutely fantastic. But for Shovel Knight Dig, it's a brand new story, a brand new direction down. Shovel Knight's finally digging in the sand. There are a lot of platforming aspects to it. You know, you're platforming through the levels, but it also has roguelike elements as well.
Awesome.
So every adventure is going to be different, though it's a linear story. As you're digging down the well, we have like, oh my gosh, thousands of procedurally generated levels that are stitched together. Wow. And every adventure is different. Really fun when you play, kind of difficult when I'm recording the gameplay and I'm like, oh, that moment was really cool. And then I can't go back.
Oh, no.
So it's one of those things. But there's tons of different like armor that you can upgrade with as you're going on your adventure. There's permanent items. Cool. There's tons of little friends and cool new characters in the game. It's a brand new, full, complete Shovel Knight adventure with a whole new direction.
Just go down. I love that. Whole new direction. Down.
And left and right. But yeah, also down.
Also down. So when the team is developing a roguelike, where, as you said, no two things are ever the same, do you worry about like how much awesome stuff you put in a trailer? Because you have like these awesome scenarios, and some folks, just because of the procedural generation, may not get there. They may have their own, obviously. But so is there like a thought process into how you present the game, even though it may be, I mean, it'll play the same, but the actual experience might be slightly different?
So the cool thing about Dig is that the procedurally generated, like basically how we were planning it is like there's a bunch of different rooms and we stitched them together. Mm-hmm. So it's like procedurally generated light. So we've played through a lot of them. We did room review where we saw like the levels and we're like, oh, this one's really cool. This one could tweak this. So though it's a different experience, sometimes you might recognize a few things.
That's cool.
It's the same characters, same monsters, just a different experience every time. So I feel like players will be more excited to go down the wells rather than being like, oh, I wish I saw that too.
Sure.
They'll have fun every time.
Sure. Now, you did say there is a linear story. So is it like a set number of chapters and then the procedural generation happens within that? So you always have the same number of stages. They just may be different every time, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so cool. As you dig down the well, you'll go through, you'll explore new lands and you'll meet cool and familiar characters and some new ones too. You're going to have a blast. But for it, you follow the story and the path that you go depends on your choices.
That's cool. Now let's talk about Nitrome for a little bit because you mentioned the facelift that the game got. And I would agree that is very striking, new sort of shine, I guess, or like a fresh coat of paint. It's hard to describe, like, but if you were to put the two together, like screenshots together, there is a definite difference. Did you approach them about this? Was it the other way around? Like how did that relationship come about?
Oh, we approached them. We're fans of Bomb Chicken and all the cool things that they made. Like Nitrome is just a fantastic partner, and they make cool stuff and their designs are unique. Mm-hmm. And it's something that definitely caught our eye. So when we were thinking about, we want to make like the next Shovel Knight adventure, but we want to work with someone on that, who would we pick? Nitrome, heck yeah. So it was pretty much a natural progression with that in the development process.
Now, was there a desire to try and keep it looking like the original Shovel Knight games, or did they want to go a little further and you had to dial them back? You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously you want it to look like Shovel Knight and that retro appeal, but also I could see where Nightchrome could take this into like a brand new direction. So was there like trouble trying to find that balance in between how it like the retro old school and maybe a little newer as they were trying to do?
So what I feel is like there's such a synergy with it, and like side note, our team always jokes that like Shovel Knight's like the 8-bit NES era, and we're like, we're occasionally growing. So when we announced Mina, it's like the Game Boy Color era.
Okay.
And around that time, it's like, oh, the SNES era. So I guess we're progressing through the consoles.
Interesting.
Maybe in like 2020, like maybe 2040, we'll hit Xbox 360. I don't know. But like, it's just kind of one of those things that it was a natural progression of like, oh, this style makes sense. And especially for working with Nitro and their own unique style, it really blended and naturally went into that. That's so we were game.
Now, I am excited for the eventual Yacht Club developed PS1 3D platformer, like the legendary Croc Legend of the Gobos. The game only I remember that game. Every time I say it to somebody, they're like, "What are you talking about?" Real quick before we get into the end of the PAX for you, I do want to talk about your plans for PAX West. Jake Kaufman back to do the soundtrack here. I got a big. You were talking about going through generations. I got a big Genesis vibe from this soundtrack in that trailer. Are you getting the same thing as me? Like he's kind of going through the console eras too. Like it was NES first. Now, like I said, we're thinking like Sega Genesis Master System sort of thing.
I've been hearing that a lot. Like my brain goes SNES, sure, but it does feel like Genesis as well. Same era, same thing. But yeah, I guess we're all evolving through the retro eras together. We're so glad that Jake really went hard on this track, like on all of it, like not just the trailer. He was like coming up with like different like melodies. He's like, oh, I wanted to go into like this musical progression, as you're like going through the stages. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Jake, like you didn't have to make such a banger, but you did. He works with the Yacht Club Game team. He's a part of the crew, so. He's always going to be making our music forever and ever.
Now, do you when you go to him for like a new game idea concept and he starts making music for you, are you explaining scenarios or is he seeing like pre-alpha footage and composing his music based on what he's seeing? Like where is his entry point into like the concept? You know what I'm saying? So that way he can start making his music.
Jake's office is like down from mine, like literally down.
Oh, like he's hallway. He's in there. Oh, I'm
like when I needed the trailer,
he's an in-house composer. I see. Okay.
So like when he was making the Dig trailer, I was like, "Hey, Jake, by the way, I need a track." He's like, "Okay, got you."
Got it.
But like as a process in general, it may have been different before like I joined Yacht Club Games because I am a bit newer. I've been with the studio for a couple of years now. Sure. So I think before it was like it's like a synergist type process where like we were developing the game as he was making music. But right now it's more of like we're working on the game. He knows like the idea of the levels and the feeling of it, and he's working on the music, and he shares his genius with us as it goes. That's like cool. Every time he pops in Mina The Hollower chat, and he's like, I have this cool track I'm playing, like thinking about. It's always fantastic. And he's like, but it's not ready yet, so don't judge it. I'm like, judge it for being amazing? Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
What does not ready mean to you? Like, what is it?
I don't know. It sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. He went through several revisions of like, for example, the Mina The Hollower trailer music.
Sure.
And each one sounded amazing. Like I wanted to save it as a ringtone. So I don't know. Perfect awesome. Every time. That's Jake.
Yeah. Wow. When you have a composer like that, and some of the music I always go back to. Just today in preparation for this to get myself in the Shovel Knight mindset, I was listening to Plains of Passage, an all-timer.
Good choice.
Just an all-timer. All right, so let's talk about. You mentioned Mina The Hollower a couple of times. I do want to get into your PAX plans. You will have a booth. You will have a section on the PAX West show floor. Dig, obviously, going to be a big part of that, I assume. Mm-hmm. Yes. So what, Mina, also, let's talk about Mina. You announced that right at the end of last year. I think this was the G4 announcement, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so our G4 announcement was on February, I want to say 2nd or 1st. Year? It was this year. It feels like 4 years ago.
It does.
Jason, it feels I've aged. I have a beard now. It's been a wild ride. But yeah, so it was early this year. We announced it in the Yacht Club Games Presents, and it was so much fun. Oh my gosh, keeping Mina a secret for so long was so difficult.
I can imagine.
All my colleagues, I'm always like, watching you guys like your no leakies. What was really funny was that Alec, and I didn't even know this, Alec, he's the director for the game. He had Mina as his Twitter banner for like a year, and I didn't notice. Nobody noticed, and it was just his little hidden secret, and he called it out, and I was like, oh my gosh, Alec, no doing that. It's illegal now.
I'm on to you. Next time he's picked ahead of game, you're going to be checking his Twitter banner every single day.
I don't know, just in general, just check it just in case. I'm inspecting. So what are we even talking about? Yeah, so we had our Yacht Club Games Presents on G4 with our good friend Gerard, and we gave an update on Dig. We pinky promised it would come out in 2022. Surprise, we kept our promise. Yeah. Go team. Yay, we did it.
Go team.
We celebrated Cyber Shadow's 1-year anniversary. We announced that we were going to be making a vast slate of DLC for Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, which I'll get into in a moment. And we announced Mina The Hollower's Kickstarter. And it was so wild. It was a 30-day run. And we raised, I think, $1.2 million for the campaign. It was funny because our goal was $311,503. And you're like, Celia, that's a very oddly specific number. And yeah, you're right. It's $1 more than the Shovel Knight campaign, for inflation. Yeah, that's what we did that one. Yeah,
that's
it makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to
account for logic. I don't know.
Got to account for everything, even factors coming in from outside the studio. Makes sense to me. But I would say you obliterated that.
It was within 7-8 hours. We
crushed it.
Jumped past that. We hit 100,000 in the first hour. It was such a wild ride. It was fun.
Got to be good for the confidence of the whole entire studio that your fans would just jump in and raise that amount of money quickly.
We are, and we're beyond thankful for the community, and the whole focus of that is that we get to develop the game with the community. Right now we're doing our private developer streams where fans get to be literally in the development room with us as we're making the game, and we have a Discord, and anyone listening, join our Discord. And it's a whole lot of fun. It's a good time.
That is awesome. So that is targeting next year though, right? That's 2023. But will it be playable? Oh, yes.
With an asterisk. So fun fact, on Kickstarter, the latest date that you can put is 2023 in December. So everyone was announcing that as the release time. And I'm could be earlier. Could be later. I don't know. We'll let you know in, a presents or something of the sort eventually.
Or Apple Arcade will give us the release date again.
I know, right? There you go.
Who knows with you wily yacht clubbers. So Mina will be on the PAX show floor playable?
Yes.
Awesome.
So we are showing off the demo. That with the secret demo, the proof of concept demo, we made some tweaks to it, so it'll be a lot smoother than the media only version of it. Cool. But we thought it'd be a really cool time while we're in mid development to show what we're working on and hear fans' feelings and thoughts about the game and be like, oh, okay, where do we want to go from here, and hear what people really enjoy and maybe lean into that a little bit more. Yeah, so absolutely. I'm so excited to see people play Mina and whip around.
Nice to have that in person immediate reaction back after so long of not having it. So Mina will be there. I assume Dig will be there playable for everybody who's in attendance. And you mentioned DLC for Pocket Dungeon. Will we be seeing any of that on the show floor?
Okay, so it will be not necessarily the DLC, but you'll get to play Pocket Dungeon on the show floor, and we'll be talking a lot about the DLC. Right now, it's in early preview mode, so for any folks at home that own the Steam version of the game, the DLC is free, and you can play it right now, the first pack, since it is an early preview. And when it's the retail-ready version, it will also be free, so it's free either way. Cool. But basically for it, there's new characters, new relics. We're working on mod support for the game. We're working on versus mode. There's tons of things that we're going to be adding to it right now. But the first pack, which is called the Puzzlers Pack, is available on Steam, so anyone can play it. But on the show floor, you'll get to play an updated version. It's like a half step to the DLC.
Cool.
People will enjoy it.
That's awesome. If you've not played Pocket Dungeon yet, please do so. It snuck in at the end of 2021 and really blew a lot of people away. everything Yacht Club does turns to gold, I feel like. It's from the original Shovel Knight all the way to now. Always a pleasure, Celia, to speak with you here on the show. Look forward to the next time. Now, normally we do this every December. We're a little early this time, but hopefully next time we'll have something to talk about again very, very soon. Have the best time at PAX West. Hope you get nothing but praise on the show floor, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Celia Schilling, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Coming up after the break, we speak to Matt Casamassina from Rogue Games about what they're bringing to PAX West this weekend. Stick around. Yes, folks, welcome back to Cheese Steaks and Controllers, episode 110, the PAX West preview show. Thank you very much to Justin Roiland and Celia Schilling for their interviews earlier in the show. I hope you enjoyed them. If you did, feel free to listen to them again. I would appreciate that. But do not do that yet, because we have one more interview to get us out of here today. Very, very excited to speak with someone who has been in the industry for a very long time. And when I say that, I mean he founded IGN very long time. One of the pillars of gaming journalism, moved on to Apple, where he built Apple's gaming division, and now he is the CEO of Rogue Games, a brand new publisher, up and coming publisher, I should say, with some pretty cool games in their portfolio that we'll talk about now. And that is Matt Casamassina. I think I got that right.
You got it.
Yeah, there he is. How are you, Matt?
I'm super great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you today about Rogue Games at PAX. Reached out to a friend of mine who said that you had a lot of stuff going on here. John O'Reilly from Zebra Partners. I want to shout out him for making this happen. Let's first talk about something you announced recently that's very cool. That you were going to a 4-day work week. Obviously, crunch and overworking is a huge issue here in our industry. So the fact that you're going with 4 days is really, really cool. So walk me through like the thought process for that and how you were able to make that happen.
Yeah. I think it starts with, you mentioned I've been doing this for a very long time. And when we started out at IGN, it was a startup, right? And so we worked very, very long hours. I did that in my 20s, and I loved it. I loved rolling up my sleeves and working until 2 a.m. every night. But now I'm a man in my 40s, and quality of life is playing a much bigger role in my life. And I've got 3 children, I've got 2 dogs, I've got a wife, and it's a lot to juggle, right? And so, especially as we were gearing up for PAX, and everybody was really working extra hard for this, and they're going to continue to work pretty damn hard over the next couple of weeks. We thought, man, everyone is just killing it. What can we do that would improve the quality of lives of our employees in a meaningful, material way that also wouldn't impact the business in a negative way, right? Because we are, at the end of the day, running a company.
Sure.
So leadership got together and thought about it. And I think one of us proposed the idea of a 4-day work week, did a lot of research into it. We know that the companies that are doing it well are not seeing a material impact on business, but it does have a profound impact on the quality of their employees, their lives, right? And so we made the choice. And rather than trying to reallocate hours, instead of doing, about 8 hours a day, we're going to make it 10-hour days and you'll get 1 extra day. We decided just to do away with that completely. Just have normal 8-hour days, 4 days a week, give everybody a Friday off, enjoy your 3-day work week or your 3-day weekend, and then come back refreshed and ready to work again, right? And so that's the idea behind it. And we're excited to test it out. It's going to start in about 2 weeks from now, and we should check back in 6 months. I'll let you know how it's going.
I will do that. Well, so were there, you said there were mentions about the hour allocation, maybe 4 10s or even 4 9s, but you stuck with the 4 8s. Was there a lot of discussion in that, or was that a decision kind of made pretty quickly?
No, we just thought, I think there's a general feeling at Rogue that a 5-day work week is a little bit antiquated, right? And something we've done for a very long time, and we just continue to do it because that's the way it's always been. But I think what we're seeing from the workforce right now is that folks are kind of screaming for a change, and I think a lot of companies are ignoring that.
Sure.
We didn't want to be part of that group. We wanted to be a little bit more progressive here and try it out.
So you're taking a roguish approach to the work.
Yeah, thank you for
living up to that namesake. So let's talk about PAX this week. Obviously, I'm taking a look at your portfolio of upcoming games. There are 6 mentioned on the Steam store right now. We're going to get into a couple of those, but I want to get specifically into what your booth is going to look like at PAX West this year, what people can expect, what they can try out, things like that. So lay it on us. What are you bringing to PAX this year?
We're bringing a lot. This is I gotta admit, it's my first time personally to ever go to PAX. And as you know, I've been doing this for so long from the journalistic side.
Mhm.
I've been to a million game shows, never been to PAX, so I'm personally
Wow.
very excited to go. But this is also a Rogue first in that this is the first booth we've ever done
Cool.
for our games. And so we're planning to go big. I think it's a double-sized booth. We've got something like 5 games on the show floor, maybe a couple more behind closed doors. And the lineup is pretty amazing. We're going to have all playable kiosks for all of our games, so you'll be able to get hands-on time with them. And I think, I really hope people get some hands-on time because there's no smoke and mirrors with our games. You play them, I think you're going to love them, plain and simple. And we've also got a great cosplayer who we're teamed up with to promote one of our games, a game called Cookie Cutter. And so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be photo ops and ample opportunity to just hang out with the Rogue folks. Maybe one of our advisors will drop by, Reggie. He's a big fan of the company and I'm a big fan of him. And so we'll see what happens at the show.
That's a Reggie Fils-Aimé of Cheesesteaks and Controllers episode 100 fame, among other things. So Cookie Cutter is one I actually wanted to get into with you. I'm reading the description on your website. Techno pop punk 2D hand-drawn Metroidvania. That's a lot of words.
There's a lot there.
That's a lot going on there. So I watched the trailer. I really was struck by what was going on here. Plus that logo with the teeth. There's a really lot to take in. So for someone who may be introduced to this for the first time, what would be your, I guess, elevator pitch or what? How would you describe this game?
Yeah, I think if you were going to just really boil it down, it's a very deep 2D hand-drawn Metroidvania with a very cool punk rock vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean punk rock necessarily from a music point of view, but I just mean the attitude, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very provocative. The main character is this is not the normal heroine you see in games. She's a badass in her own right, but she's a badass who wields a chainsaw and rides around on a motorcycle and, also is grinding with her electric guitar through enemies and stuff. And so it's very cool. And the team behind it they're a bunch of crazy people, and it's just starting to show in game as well. So this is one I think is going to blow people away when they get their hands on it, because we've shown some trailers. The art is gorgeous. If you're into hand-drawn art, yeah, you're going to love that. But I think the thing that's going to probably surprise some people is that the gameplay is even better than it looks. It's incredibly deep, and in fact, I'll go on the record to say that I think it's going to be one of, if not the best, Metroidvanias of 23. I think it's going to blow people away. Yeah. Really?
That's very interesting. So what's the name of the team? Just so we can give them their proper...
They're called Subcult Joint, and they're a new team. There's just a combination of folks across Europe. We've got folks from Italy, folks from the UK, etc. Just developing this just insane game that we can't wait to show you guys more of. Yeah.
That is cool. Now, speaking of Metroidvanias, you have another one in your portfolio here coming out in 23. That's The Last Case of Benedict Fox, which made a huge impression on me back, I think, in June or July when it first debuted. So Lovecraftian Metroidvania, obviously, I think more than Cookie Cutter, Lovecraftian kind of goes back to the Metroid part of the Metroidvania. Walk me through again the elevator pitch for this. I'm really like what I'm seeing, but what made you interested in it when it was like first pitched to you?
It's gorgeous, right? I mean, we unveiled it with Microsoft, which we're incredibly proud to do, and I think people were really struck by the visuals. It's got this awesome visual style that harkens back to some of these games that have been announced from these great studios. So everything from The Last Night, which was unveiled at E3 so many years ago, to Replace from Raw Fury. It's got this sort of like 2D, 3D style where you've got this awesome art in the background that sort of looks 2D, but then you've got this foreground 3D environment, which is awesome. Okay. And so I love that. I think the visuals just immediately struck everybody at Rogue, and we were excited to work with it. But then you sink your teeth into it a little bit, and you've got this sort of like Tim Burton-esque mind melded game that feels like it was ripped right out of his head, and it's just so gothic. And if you're into a story and you want to do some puzzling and then some investigation, this is the Metroidvania for you. I mean, I don't want to downplay the awesome work these guys are doing on platforming and also combat, because that's all there as well. But I think whereas Cookie Cutter probably emphasizes combat a bit more, Benedict emphasizes story and puzzling exploration. And so we've got, I hope, something that's going to fill the needs of any type of Metroidvania player in 23.
That actually was a good segue to my next question. How do you balance having two games of a format like Metroidvania? And Metroidvania in general just seems to be a very popular, independent, published sort of genre. Like, how do you, not only stick out amongst the rest of them, but then make sure that both of yours stick out when they release it, and not cannibalize each other?
Yeah, that's hard. It's hard to answer because I don't know that I have the right answer, other than to emphasize what we feel is very different and unique about each game, right? And when you stack them side by side, they actually, other than sharing the label Metroidvania, there's almost nothing in common between the two games. They play very differently, they look very differently, and so and in fact, one of them is fully 3D, whereas the other is hand drawn 2D.
Okay.
So I think they're going to stand on their own, and I think they can coexist quite beautifully. In fact, we've got another Metroidvania coming in 24 that we're also showing at PAX. So Rogue is in the business of Metroidvanias right now.
Sounds like it. Have you announced that 24 game yet, or is that coming?
Yeah, it's called. So it was our Rogue Jam winner. We did a show called Rogue Jam with IGN several months ago, and it was basically a kind of this event where we had folks like Reggie, myself, and others on the show, and we were judges picking these independent games to potentially land a Rogue publishing deal. Sea Frog ended up winning the competition and became the grand prize winner. It was called Sea Dog at the time. We renamed it to Sea Frog.
Okay.
But the reason we loved it so much is because, again, Metroidvania, and we do have a soft spot for those. But it's a wholesome Metroidvania. It's definitely something that anybody can play, whether you're regardless of age, regardless of demographic, and we love the wholesome aspect of it. But it's a hybrid too. It's a skateboarding game and a Metroidvania in one, and so you don't often see something like that.
No, I mean, you think Metroidvania, you think dark, brooding, monsters coming out of the corners, and then obviously the backtracking part. I would not put Tony Hawk as a
no, neither did we, right? And so we were surprised to see something like this come out, but it's got this vibe that almost looks like visually speaking, that it's something maybe Nintendo or Sega would have done. Very colorful, very approachable. But then you're grinding around levels, you're sort of like launching into the air and pulling off skateboarding tricks, and at the same time, though, it's a robust, deep Metroidvania with gated areas, upgrades, everything you would expect from Metroidvania.
Interesting. So we look forward to that. Sea Frog used to be called Sea Dog, now Sea Frog. Will that be in a booth, or would that be?
Yeah, it'll be playable.
Playable at the booth. Awesome. So that's 3, right? We talked about Benedict Fox, talked about Cookie Cutter, talked about Sea Frog. So there's 2 more, I think. You said you were going to have playable in the booth?
Yeah. So one of them is called Dust and Neon, and we just announced that this morning. And this is a really exceptional game. Every game we make is exceptional, but
sure.
Yeah, we're blown away by this. I will say we've done, publishers do all these things to try to gauge whether or not they're drinking the Kool-Aid or not. And sometimes you get a little bit caught up into your own games and you love them just because they're yours, right? But we try to safeguard against that, as most publishers do, and you basically contract outside firms to come in and evaluate your portfolio. So we did this, and Dust and Neon was one of our highest ranking games. Just about every third party came in and gave it a 9 out of 10, as if they were mock reviewing it.
Wow. So
it's a twin stick shooter. It is sort of an ISO top-down viewpoint. You play as an unnamed gunslinger who is on a mission to kill a whole ton of robots.
Love that.
And it's in this sort of like neo-noir Far West future. And you've seen, I think similar games on the market, like, everything from Weird West to West of the Dead. And I think the thing that really separates our game from those is controllability. We've got this is a twitch shooter where you're going to be taking cover. Every bullet counts. You're actually, the reload mechanic is on screen and part of the gameplay presentation. So you'll be able to see that in videos. And so you can actually manage bullet by bullet what you want to shoot and when you want to shoot. And then you've got hundreds of buffs, hundreds of upgrades, hundreds of different weapons. And it's a really deep 40+ hour, if you're a completionist, roguelite.
Now, when you're developing, like you've had this, you just announced this game today, so it's been behind the scenes for a while now.
Yeah.
But then you see something like a Weird West be announced,
Yeah.
right? Or West of Dead. What is that like in as a CEO of a publisher in your position? Or do you worry that, oh man, is this going to be a little too familiar to the non-knowing, gamer who's just looking for another game to play? Or do you then try to find like the strengths of yours and try to push them up over the likeness of the other games?
Oh man, hell yes, we worry. Every time I see something like that, can I say this? But like, we just about our pants. It's scary.
I may have to bleep that to make the FCC happy, but I will. I will do that.
Great. We're monitoring the market, right? And we want to have something that feels wholly original and new and fresh and cool for folks. And when you see something that can be perceived as similar, that sucks. It's not cool. And so all we can do is put our faith in the game, and we know our game is awesome. And I think for folks who play it at PAX, they're gonna love it. They're gonna love it, and they're gonna start talking about it. And I feel like we're gonna build some hype for it that way. But yeah, I always worry about any similar product, and even games we pick up, right? When we evaluate, hey, this is a really cool post-apocalyptic zombie shooter, but there's already 30 of those out there, and this is the leader. How are we going to be better than that game?
Right.
So that all plays into our portfolio.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because I've always wondered, like, people are developing games for 4 or 5 years, and then just before they're about to announce theirs, this other one's announced that's somehow very similar, same idea. That stuff has to suck, right?
It sucks. And you ever notice that happens in TV and movies too? That they always at the same time, these two kind of similar products. I don't know. Maybe it's just like inspiration strikes at the same time in the industry, and maybe folks get inspired by other games they see. But yeah, it does from the outside looking in. I think if you were to look at something like Dust and Neon, you'd be like, well, that kind of looks like, Weird West. But they are very different games, and they play nothing like one another.
Yeah, cool. All right, and then the final one, I'm hoping you're going to say Homebody, but if it's not, I understand.
So Homebody's there, but let me talk about Sprawl first.
Sprawl, cool, yeah.
Sprawl is the game that we've got that is representing our first-person shooter lineup. So
excellent.
You'll see much more from us in this sort of genre going forward. But Sprawl is coming along so beautifully, and we just are thrilled to show it off. So this is sort of like an homage to classic. They call them movement shooters, or I hate this term, but they also call them boomer shooters. Yeah. And so these are the games we grew up with, games like Quake and Doom, Unreal, etc., where it's just very Twitch based. It all comes down to how quick you are with your fingers. And so this is a cyberpunk take on that. Just really tight, fast control. You can do shotgun blast jumping to get around levels.
Nice.
You can do, and everything frags apart, like the old school way, where you can see like polygonal body parts just flying apart. And the game is just a ton of fun with a great soundtrack. So we're gonna let folks check it out at PAX as well, and hopefully give some really positive feedback.
Awesome.
This is just the beginning of many more first-person shooter type games to come from Rogue, but I think folks will be excited what they see. Is there
a genre that you wouldn't take on? Like, is there one where maybe it's just your own personal?
Yeah. I mean, it's mostly around. We don't like to touch casino free-to-play products. Sure. Something like that. We would never touch something like that. And there are some free-to-play games out there. And Rogue started in free-to-play before we pivoted, and we moved into the premium space. And I think the general feeling is for us to do free-to-play would have to really make sense for that audience.
Sure.
And so we only have one game in development for free-to-play right now, and it's with Sony. And it's a version of Wipeout, and that's probably going to be it for the time being.
Makes sense. All right. So then last question, I do want to ask about Homebody, because the game, survival horror, not normally my thing. I am a large man. I want to keep my heart going. But I have to ask you, obviously Game Grumps built their reputation on being silly YouTube commenters, what have you. How are they as developers?
So far, so great. So these guys are, what I love about Game Grumps is cool bunch of folks who are way more humble than they need to be, way more likable, just like cool guys than they need to be. Right? They don't need Rogue. They can go and work with other folks if they wanted to.
Sure.
So we're actually quite honored that they want to work with us on this. And what I love about this game is it's so different from their last title, right? And it almost is kind of out of left field, but they're just wanting to make the games that they want to make, and we're down for it. What I like about Homebody in particular is that although yes, it is a classic homage to Resident Evil of yesteryear.
Sure.
And so you've got fixed camera angles. It's not, the camera doesn't follow behind the back very often. So you're walking through areas, you've got pivoted or the fixed viewpoint, and just like classic Resident Evil. But the storyline is something we haven't seen before. One, it deals with anxiety, which I think is something that's pretty topical right now for a lot of folks in the gaming industry.
I would agree. Yep.
And two, it's not what you think. So there's twists and turns around how you play it, and how you will replay the same sort of experience multiple times with different outcomes.
Interesting.
So we're excited about that. I don't want to tease too much, but
no, don't. Yeah, I wouldn't want that to be spoiled, though. That sounds very, very cool. And if it ends up being a secret, Dream Daddy Simulator sequel, then that's what it ends up being. But I will let you go on that. Thank you very much for your time. Fantastic conversation. Check out the Rogue Games booth at PAX West. Sounds like by the size of it, you won't be able to miss it. But there's going to be a lot of great games there for you to check out. This right from the CEO's mouth, Matt Casamassina. I got it again. Did not stumble. Thought I might. But thank you very much for your time, Matt. And I will speak to you hopefully again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
And with that, we are at the end of episode number 110 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast. As always, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, and iHeartRadio. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to this. If you are hearing this part right now that I am saying to you, as I say every single week, I appreciate it, as that means you got to the end of the episode. You stuck with me throughout the entire episode, and I really do appreciate it every single time. I look forward to bringing you more of the biggest and best in video games and esports next week for episode number 111. But until then, I hope you have a fantastic Labor Day weekend, especially if you're going to PAX West. Play some games for me. I hope you have an even better week right behind it. And I look forward to bringing you again episode 111 this time next week. Goodbye.